Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Word for Kids. I'm Jaymie, and I'm guiding you through the books of Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. Last time, we learned about a man named Achan who took some of the devoted things from Jericho after the Lord had told the Israelites not to do this. Because of his sin, the Lord was angry. So when the Israelites went up to take the city of Ai, they were chased off by their enemy, and 36 soldiers were killed. When Joshua cried out to God about why this was happening, God told Joshua someone had taken the devoted things and gave him instructions about how to determine who it was. When they did this, Achan and his family came forward. His sin was found out and he died for his sins. There was a pile of stones left to remind the Israelites how serious God is about following his commands. And that's where we left off last time. Are you ready for today's adventure? Let's go. Now that the sin from within the Israelites was found out and taken care of, the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack the Ai. For I have delivered into your hands the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land." Let's pause right there for today's word of the day.
The word of the day is deliver. To give something that has been promised. Deliver.
God told Joshua he would do with the Ai the same thing he had done in Jericho, except this time the people could carry off their plunder and livestock. So Joshua took 30,000 of his best fighting men and sent them out at night. He told them to set up an ambush. Joshua said, "I and all those with me will advance on the city, and when the men come out against us, as they did before, we will flee from them. They will pursue us until we have lured them away from the city. For they will say, 'They are running away from us as they did before.' So when we flee from them, you are to rise up from ambush and take the city. The Lord your God will give it into your hand. When you have taken the city, set it on fire. Do what the Lord has commanded." Then Joshua sent them off, and they went to the place of ambush and lay in wait between Bethel and Ai, to the west of Ai. But Joshua spent that night with the people. Early the next morning, Joshua mustered his army, which just means he got them ready for battle. And he and the leaders of Israel marched before them to Ai. The entire force that was with them marched up and set up camp north of Ai, with the valley between them and the city. Now remember, 5,000 men were waiting to ambush. They were to the west of the city, and Joshua and his men were to the north. That night, Joshua went into the valley near the north side of Ai. Well, the king saw this and hurried out early in the morning to meet Israel for battle. Of course, he did not know that there was an ambush waiting behind the city. So Joshua and the Israelites let themselves be driven back and fled toward the wilderness. All the men of Ai were called to pursue them, which just means they were told to chase after them. And Joshua lured them away from their city. They left their city open when they went after the Israelites. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Hold out toward Ai the javelin that is in your hand, for into your hand I will deliver the city." So Joshua held out toward the city the javelin that was in his hand. As soon as he did this, the men in the ambush rose quickly from their position and rushed forward. They entered the city and captured it and quickly set it on fire. The men of Ai looked back and saw the smoke of the city rising up into the sky, but they had no chance to escape in any direction. The Israelites who had been fleeing toward the wilderness had turned back against their pursuers. For when Joshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city and that smoke was going up from it, they turned around and attacked the men of Ai. Those in the ambush also came out of the city against them, so that they were caught in the middle, with Israelites on both sides. Israel cut them down, leaving them neither survivors nor fugitives. But they took the king of Ai alive and brought him to Joshua. 12,000 men and women died that day, all the people of Ai. For Joshua did not hold back the javelin until he had destroyed all who lived in Ai. Israel carried off the livestock and plunder as the Lord had told Joshua. This next part is really gross. Joshua impaled the body of the king with a pole and left it until sunset. Then in the evening he had it thrown at the entrance of the city. They covered it with a large pile of rocks, and afterward Joshua built an altar to the Lord on Mount Ebal. He built it according to what is written in the book of the law of Moses. The altar was made of uncut stones, and on it they offered to the Lord burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. There Joshua wrote on stones a copy of the law of Moses. All the people stood on both sides of the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, facing the Levitical priests who carried it. All of this was according to what Moses had commanded when he gave instructions for blessing the people. Joshua read all the words of the law, both the blessings and the curses, to everyone. Men, women, children, foreigners, every word was read to every person. And that's where our story ends for today. Okay, now it's time for today's verse to remember. Today's verse is Joshua 1, verse 7. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. One more time. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Joshua 1, verse 7. In our verse today, God told Joshua to be sure to follow all the laws of Moses, and perhaps that's why Joshua did what we learned about at the end of today's story. He wrote out the laws on stones, and he read them to all of the people. The Bible tells us how to live our lives from the 10 Commandments to the teachings of Jesus. One way you can help yourself to learn about and follow God's way would be to do just what we learned Joshua did. You can write down Bible verses and tell other people about them. That's all the time we have for today, but I can't wait to see you again soon for another episode of The Word for Kids.